In the UK, there are 7 million carers, and every day 6,000 people are added to that list. In the United States, there are 31 million people caregiving, and that figure is set to double by 2020. So today, we're caring for the caregivers. Christine Conroy. Welcome to Happy Stuff and Fluff, a channel for women over 50 who are getting happy and growing younger. Of course, on Happy Stuff and Fluff, I'm all about increasing your positive emotions and helping you to get happy and grow younger. Of course, that's not to say that we are in denial about the fact that there are some challenges about getting older. And today we're going to talk about one of those. Our fabulous female over 50 today is the delightful Theresa O'Connor, who is an enlightenment coach. But today we are honouring caregivers. We're all about on Happy Stuff and Fluff helping you to build your resilience and helping you to deal with the challenges that come along and get through them quicker and with ease, or at least with more ease. And that's what today's chat is all about. Now, I know I have some viewers who are caring for loved ones. You may not be a carer, but listening to those statistics at the beginning, you probably know someone who is. So please stay tuned anyway, and you may hear something that you can pass on that would help those people. Okay, so I'll say no more and I'll introduce you to Theresa. Enjoy, and I'll speak to you later. So, hi everyone. Well, our fabulous lady over 50 today is Theresa O'Connor. Theresa is an executive enlightenment coach working as a coach for business and also personal clients. With a graduate degree from Yale in the area of psychosomatic research and body intervention, she also brings to her clients trainings in the science and use of vibrational medicine and energy medicine, as well as her lifelong unique gifts in connecting with her spiritual guides and angels. Wow, what a bio, a fascinating bio, Theresa. Welcome to Happy Stuff and Fluff. It's really great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Christine. Thank you for the invitation.
And obviously, given that bio, there's lots of interesting things that we could talk about. But I've already mentioned to my Happy Stuff and Fluffers that today we are kind of honouring caregivers. And that came about because you and I had a conversation, and that's where the conversation was falling, wasn't it? We were both expressing this very strong compassion for people who find themselves caring for loved ones. And of course, you don't have to be over 50 to find yourself in that situation, as I wasn't, and my viewers know that. But I think as we get older, there is more chance that we are likely to find ourselves caring either for elderly parents or for spouses and so on. So I think it's particularly pertinent to us and to my audience here on Happy Stuff and Fluff that we talk about that. So I know I can well imagine some of my viewers are thinking, "Oh no, talk to her about these other things," and we will if we get a chance to come back. We get a chance to come back and talk about those things in detail. That would be fabulous, Theresa, if you would do that.
Yeah, I'd love that. Any topic you would like, yes.
Okay, well, if you could just tell us briefly then what your kind of day-to-day work involves.
Well, I see clients either here at my home office in Philadelphia or remotely with Skype, or go to businesses myself and work with them from a mind, body, spirit perspective. So whatever the topic or issue the person comes with, there is intervention that can happen on any of those levels. It's not just emotional and mental, there's also vibrational and energy medicine techniques and modalities that can be used, as well as most people see me now because of the spiritual component. My work of 30 years has evolved so that the word of mouth reputation is primarily that people want to get in touch with themselves more spiritually in their own guidance. So that is factored in. So I have a traditional background in psychotherapy from an Ivy League school, and then have been able to evolve these more current aspects of energy psychology into my work.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. In fact, that's what interested me about your work. This kind of traditional and more, well, what would you call them? Not, I don't like to use the word alternative.
Integrative.
Integrative medicine, so on. That's what I find so interesting. And also this mind-body connection, which we are really now, I think, just about starting to get the full measure of that. And it's also one of the things I say to people now. Obviously, I'm not a social worker. I'm not an expert in caregiving, although, as I've said previously on the channel, I have had personal experience in caregiving at different levels. But as a caregiver, I think what we tend to do is completely forget about ourselves and focus totally on the person to whom we're giving all the care. And really, that's exactly the wrong thing to do, because what you should be doing is giving yourself extreme self-care if you are also having to support the health of someone else too. And I think this is something that we tend to forget to do. Now, I'm sure you can speak to that particular.
Well, that's what you're saying would be the ideal. And part of what I shared with you in a prior conversation is my own personal experience of being a caregiver with my mother who was aging, and that was over a period of 5 or 6 years. And so although I'm a registered nurse and I have all this psychological background, in retrospect now, going on 2 years since her passing, I see how the loss of control of one's life, when we live our life without outside requirements as much, we have an internal locus of control. We're determining what we're going to do in a day. I had a full business and I needed to switch to an external locus of control based on whether I had to call an ambulance and take her to the hospital, or she had fallen, or we would go into doctors. So in retrospect, I think it would have been easier if I had just sort of agreed to that internally myself right up front. Theresa, you're going to do this, you're going to see it to the end, and you're giving up control to do that. So I think there was some struggle for me there.
Yeah, I think not just for you either. I think that's something, especially if you're a person who, like you say, has been working full time and have a life that you've built. All of a sudden, it seems you can find yourself in a situation where you do feel out of control, and I think that's a problem for a lot of people. And also, I mean, where speaking to people that I've spoken to, a lot of people feel or can feel resentful about that and angry. And so they've got to deal with that emotion for themselves, as well as whatever the person who is ill is bringing up, whatever emotions that's bringing up. So it's kind of like, it's no wonder you feel, especially that your emotions are out of control, because all of that's kind of going round. And very often we don't speak to anyone about those things, do we?
Not typically, I don't think. So that would be something that we would want to support your viewers in thinking about, that whether it's talking to a friend or a counselor that specializes in that kind of support, or a group. I found that the groups that I joined were more around physical exercise, that I had been so active that instead of going to a group for caregivers, I chose to go to martial arts, something where I was with the same group of people in a regular way several times a week. and also the de-stressing of the physical activity.
Right. I'm smiling here, Theresa, because I think I don't think I know anyone else who has found themselves in that situation and decides to go kickboxing. I think that's fabulous. When you told me that, I thought, oh, wow, that's just amazing that you should do that. And thinking about it, I can understand why, because that kind of physical exercise, all of those emotions that you've got inside, then that kind of physical exercise is going to help you to get rid of all that. At least I assume so. Not having been a kick myself.
Yeah. It was a great, if you're punching a bag with a boxing glove on, or you know, kicking, it was a great outlet. Plus, it was fun.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the way it happened was one day I was just driving past this studio for martial arts, and I just got this impression, heard this sort of voice in my head say, "You go sign up for that." And so that was what I did for the last 2 years of my mother's life, and then continued for another year, and then switched to CrossFit, which is more strenuous and I enjoy more.
Okay, that's interesting too, because I think a lot of the time I would call you, I don't know, you may call this something different, but I would call that intuition. And when you get that voice that says, do this, but a lot of the time, a lot of people would have thought, kickboxing? No, me, and drive straight past and not do anything about it. But you didn't, you decided to follow your intuition and go and do that. And I think that's also something that we tend, you know, especially when you're caring for someone else, that kind of self-care, if you like, or is kind of goes by the way. So I think one of the things I would like to say, and I know I've got quite a few viewers who are caring for loved ones, is this idea about caring for yourself first and not feeling in any way that that's a selfish thing to do, given that you are meant to be, or guilt obviously comes into this too. You shouldn't be spending time on yourself. It makes you feel guilty because you should be with the person. It's all of those things that I would say you've got to learn to, if you're going to do the best for the person you're caring for, you've got to be firing on all cylinders, don't you think?
That's well said, Christine. I agree fully. Yes. And if you feel that you can't, I had to have someone come in and be with my mother while I went to these classes to exercise and made those arrangements. And if you feel you are not in a position to maybe do that, even if you can get out and walk in your neighborhood for a few minutes and look at the birds or the flowers, sort of mindfully connect with something that's outside. Your life can get so small.
Yeah.
Even journaling, the research on journaling is 20 minutes of journaling for 4 consecutive days showed health benefits for 6 months. And that's when they stopped measuring it. So it's that connection with self. How do we stay connected with ourselves and not lose ourselves?
Yeah, and also I think journaling is good because sometimes we have a thought that we might consider an inappropriate thought in these kind of situations where we think, oh, and feel bad about thinking that thought. Sometimes if you can get them, I'm just trying to think of something specific, you know, perhaps being a little bit resentful about being there when you want to be somewhere else, maybe journaling about that or getting that out of your head and down on paper can really help, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We haven't actually talked about journaling yet on Happy Stuff and Fluff, but it's something I believe in too, and something that I did and do, in fact. But in that instance, I think particularly that's a great suggestion, Theresa, that to be able to just sit down for 5 minutes if the person you're with is sleeping or something, and just sit down and write, knowing that nobody's going to see what you're writing, you know, that you don't need to censor your thoughts, just get them out and get them down on paper can really help.
Yeah, and just to be able to say, this is so hard, and what's hard about it, and
yeah,
you know, I wish I had my old life back, or you know, whatever the feelings are.
Yeah, because as I say, I think that you think that just because it's someone that you love dearly, that you're supposed to want to be doing all those things and be happy to be doing all those things, which, you know, I have to say, hand on heart, but I was very lucky, in as much as I had support from family. I have, when my mum, so I've helped to care for my mum, my sister, and my daughter. So all different ages, all different issues, really, at different times, and, you know, requiring different levels of care. My sister, because I have to smile when I say carer, which is a term we use in the UK. My sister, who died with cancer at the age of 46, I was, and I say lucky enough to be able to stop everything I was doing and spend time with her. This is why I say I was lucky. But she didn't care for that term carer at all. Not at all. I think language is also important, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I never use that term in the, you know, in the presence of my mother. It's a technical term that if you're, you know, referring in certain circumstances or looking something up on the internet or YouTube,
Yeah.
for what is said for on behalf of caregivers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was, you know, her daughter, and just to, it really is such sacred time and space, and just to be able to be clear within oneself enough to enjoy the time. So we had a ritual every Saturday morning. My mother would shower and wash her hair, and I would set her hair. At night, I would massage her back with lotion. And so for others, just the suggestion of touch, you know, the holding of the hand decreases stress hormones for both people. We're massaging, you know, just rubbing the hand with lotion or rubbing feet or just touch, and remember the connection, because you can feel so disconnected with the paperwork and the finances and the appointments and the scheduling, and
it's overwhelming, isn't it? It
can feel that way,
especially when you've got all the practical issues, and these are things I can't advise on, things like the financial issues, you know, if you work, issues with family, because, you know, as I say, I was lucky that my family, have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and when my mum was ill, that was shared, and with my sister too, and of course with my daughter, I had my husband and my other children who were always there to support me. Now, I know there are people who are on their own doing this, as you, well, I mean, you are you an only child, or you're not an only child?
No, I'm one of 3, and part of the difficulty through that period was my sisters decreased their assistance, and then, you know, because of factors in their own lives, were just not available. Right. So that in the last 2 years, it was, everything was, you know, the power of attorney, the choices, the elder care lawyer, just to get everything set up. And so
all those things.
It's quite, become pretty full time.
Yeah. But coming back to what you were saying there about touch, because I guess this is my interest in this, and my this idea of being, as it was with my sister, being it's just me and you, it's just the 2 of us, that we kind of developed this most amazing relationship and connection that we would not have had if she hadn't been ill. I mean, obviously I wish every day that she hadn't been ill. Nevertheless, we became very close, and, you know, found ourselves saying things and doing things that we probably never would have done. Now, I know some people don't like touch. I mean, certainly us Brits are known for being quite reserved in that respect. But I think that amazing healing sense of touch, and just like you said, just holding someone's hand or stroking and touching and learning to do that is really healing for both sides, both the, and I have to use the term because I don't know what other term to use, but the caregiver and the person who needs the care, is,
or any form of quality time, you know. I found, and the research shows, that listening to music from the era of that person. So for my mother, it was the 1940s.
Oh,
So
really? Oh, that's
Dean,
interesting.
Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, and music that she would have danced with my father to, and he predeceased her by 25 years. So that remembrance of it fires certain parts of the brain that is very soothing for the person.
So, sorry, I had to cut it off. I had to cut it off there. This is in 2 parts, so obviously there is another part, and I have asked Theresa to come back after that actually, but you'll hear about that in part 2. Now, if you want to know more about Theresa's work, about the enlightenment coach and the energy healing side, if you go to her website, which is O'Connor, so just OCONNOR dash associates.net. I'll leave the website below. You can find out more about her work. I'm not going to wait a week until we show the second part, because in that second part Theresa actually takes us through an intervention that helps to reduce stress very quickly. It's just a kind of 2-minute intervention that will help you, not just if you're a caregiver and feeling stressed, but in general if you're feeling stressed, and lots more conversation that will hopefully help those of you who are caregivers. So thank you for being here today, and remember that on the Happy Stuff and Fluff we are getting happy and growing younger. Watch out for part 2. See you soon. Bye bye.